this is Pops, and we're going to talk about Adventures of Superman. Jon Kent. Yep, that's right. So remember when Superman, son of Kal-El, was canceled, but not really canceled according to Tom Taylor? Well, that's because he had this one in the works, right? It's like it was a failing title with, no real readers. It was a complete disaster despite all of their sexuality gimmicks. So we are now getting this one, which is part of, quote, Road to Justice. It's only a 6-part miniseries from what I actually read just before I started recording this. Was I did not know that. So uh, this is like the multiverse, multiple characters, multiple Supermen type stuff that I really just really can't stand. So I will be probably a lot more biased against this than maybe you will be. But if you don't want spoilers, you don't want some of those details, then check back. So Jon Kent is, trying to lead a normal life here. We'll get to that in a moment because first we have to go out into the multiverse, right? We have to see, our Superman or a Superman struggling to stay alive. He's fighting somebody, and it's ugly and bloody. And we get to see Ultraman. Yep. Well, this is Ultraman, and Ultraman successfully, with really minimal pushback, defeats and murders Superman. And I don't know exactly why DC feels the need to keep doing this to us, to give us these painful deaths of our heroes and things we like. I don't think that I think they think that they're being deep or thought provoking or interesting. It is not. It's just multiverse tricks. It's just nonsense. And to me, it's nothing more than just cheap gimmicks that, basically lessen the impact of Death of Superman and other storylines, which actually like made their company survive the 90s, basically. Well, here's John. He's with his boyfriend. There's Jay. So just in case you want to understand what's going on, they're kind of leading their normal life. Nobody's like, oogling over him. And there's all this little back and forth about, living every day and everyone knowing that Jay Nakamura is Superman's boyfriend. And it's like they're still sort of obsessed with this. Uh, but what we get is we get John having to be called away. I could not stand this panel. This is my second least favorite panel in this book because he's so fast and he's Superman. He should be able to just change. Instead, you have this desire to make a panel where he's slowly taking off his shoes. I really hated this panel. So this is our look at John. John's not changed a whole lot. He has still a very long, slender, athletic, effeminate body, and there's like these meteor satellite things that are crashing into the Earth. So you have these, massive colors and things like that as he's zooming around doing his thing. And then he has the OG blue lightning, which you see teased on the cover, right? You have this little moment with this like almost like power surge. Remember when Superman turned like blue lightning for a minute and everybody hated it and they immediately went right back to classic Superman because that's not what we want. I feel like that's what we're doing here. Don't know for sure. But out of the blue, Val-Zod shows up. So Val-Zod is Black Superman from a different universe, and you have them going side by side. They're having some conversation, and it's like, well, thanks for talking to me instead of just jumping to conclusions and lashing out. Oh, I'm not really a lashing out without provocation person. I've always found those, quote, heroes fighting heroes over a mistaken identity or mistaken motivation fights a little embarrassing. It reflects kind of poorly on all of us. So, yeah, yeah, Tom Taylor has a lot of word vomit and a lot of issues, and this panel is truly unbearably difficult to handle. So there's hug and embrace because they involve Mr. Terrific. I guess they know each other, whatever. We don't have a lot of context. If you don't read a lot of the DC comics, you don't quite understand what's happening in the scene. And they're basically just explaining some of the details with Val-Zod and Red Tornado and how they need to gather together because there's this massive threat off world and they need John. And there's death. There's Kal Els that are dying. And then we get to, because I've said this, most modern comics have to have one cringe panel. And this is my cringe panel. I don't know why the artist decided to not draw eyes on Val-Zod, why we needed to have dot eyes. He looks like a generic ad from a like 1980s comic book. Like, how they would be like the G.I. Joe animation show ads, and there'd be like the other ads that are kind of in and around it. That's what this reminded me of, like a classic ad, not an actual panel to the story. Anywho, let's get back to the story because we have Red Tornado, who's obviously a lady, and it's like, there's Lois on Jon Kent's universe, and she's like, "Well, who are you?" "Well, you know who she is? She's Lois Lane." Bum bum bum. Because in the DC universe and the multiverses and everything we just do things, right? We just do things. It doesn't really have to have interesting heroic moments and things that continue to make the character interesting, dynamic, or that readers would want to buy another comic book for. No, we just do random things. In some other universe, I'm sure there's a Lois Lane Red Tomato. Red Tomato. Well, that's a good Sporking News blooper, isn't it? Red Tornado. So Lois Lane, the Red Tornado. Maybe she's a red tomato as well. I mean, if it's an infinite number of multiverses, maybe that's the fan fiction that we need to write, is the Lois Lane Red Tomato issue. All right, Tom Taylor, if you're listening, that's what we really want, is Lois Lane Red Tomato. I was curious on how they would handle picking up the pieces after the failed Superman Son of Kal-El mess, and they're just doing this little mini-series. I don't know that I find it nearly as unbearable to read as that series had become, because that series was just like awful. And it's only like a couple little moments in this. It doesn't really derail the adventure that Jon Kent is on. He's obviously getting sucked up into this conflict. He's going to have to go off world and be, I guess, more powerful than all the other Supermen, because I didn't like even seeing the opening sequence. Like I would have not wanted to spend the $4 or whatever this book actually costs. It's insane that they're. Oh yeah, I'm sorry, it's on sale right now for $3.59. So yeah, $4 is the cover price for this book. The Clayton Henry art isn't as awful as some of the art was in the Son of Kal-El book, but again, you have a couple panels that are just like phoned it in panels. Like I have no idea what was happening in that one where there's like dots for eyes. Like Val-Zod just totally got the dot for eye treatment. It's just embarrassing. It's embarrassing. And I don't really care for Val-Zod. I don't really care for Mr. Terrific that much. They're just okay to me. Anyway, that's a story. We've caught you up on Jon Kent and the saga that is Jon Kent at DC, who Tom Taylor is evidently living vicariously through to continue to try to be relevant. Not particularly interesting to me, but that's the latest, greatest there. So I'm Pops. Tell me what you guys think. You want to pick this up? You want to read this? You want to read Red Tomato, Lois Lane? Because that may be more interesting. So anyway, that's my take on it. I'm Pops.
Yeah. Right?